What's going on, everybody? Another midnight cap. Told you guys, I'm gonna be streaming more, man. I'll be taking this. I'm gonna be taking this YouTube stuff seriously. Sorry, I'm typing right now. I can't type and talk at the same time. I also just was on that. Well, I wasn't on the stream, but I just watched it. And once it ended, when I started my stream, I don't want to take away well, not that I would take any away, but I didn't want to take away any potential viewers because I know they're having. I think it's Jeremy Super from Stupid Chainsaw Productions. He's getting married, so I think could be wrong on that. I know it's Jeremy. I don't know if it's the same Jeremy though. Um, but he's getting married, so that was pretty cool. Matt was doing a stream with them, so go give that a watch. I'm sure it's. I don't know if he's going to be uploading it. I'm sure he will. So what's everybody been up to? Oh, Arthur just uploaded. Let's actually watch this. Um, there we go. Oh no, this was from 5 hours ago. I just got the notification. That's what it is. Oh, he donated an EU book. Beware Bear's Castle. It's not EU, is it? Beware Vader's Castle. Is that an EU story? I don't even know. Never heard of it. It looks like a new canon story because it's Star Wars Adventures and that's the new canon thing. Not really expecting too many people to join the stream, but we'll see, for sure, for sure. I don't really know what to talk about. What should we talk about? I am, um Matt, when he on his stream, he, they all ranked the Essential Legends collection covers. I actually do wanna do that, maybe for a video. I think that'd be a cool video. Get a couple of friends on to do that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Um In fact, I think I'm gonna start asking around, because those are, there's not a lot of things to talk about, unfortunately, anymore. There's not a whole lot of EU stuff going on, and the little bit that we get is, new covers and comparing them. Um, so yeah, and I pretty much share a lot of the. Okay, there's some of the covers I do admire. I do think are kind of cool, for different reasons, but I think that's something I would like to do. I think that'd be a cool video. And then I could do a video of just ranking like my top 10 favorite EU covers. I think that would be really cool. Um, I think that'd be a lot of fun. So, because I feel, the EU, obviously the art is really found in the comics, right? Because it's obviously those are based in art. Art is a part of those books, but you know, I don't feel like just art in general in the EU. It gets attention, but I think it should get more attention because there's a lot of great EU art out there, and it's certainly something that I'd love to talk about more. Um, I've had people ask me, when are you going to read Supernatural Encounters? I don't know. That's gonna be one of the last things I think I read in the expanded universe because I know I've changed. Either I'm going to just wait until I read most of everything and then read Supernatural Encounters, or I'm just going to read Fate of the Jedi first and then read Supernatural Encounters. I don't know when I'm gonna read it. I have two copies of it. Not to brag, I have the donator copy, the paperback, and then I have the Amazon edition, which Arthur sent me, which she was very kind to do so. Um, I think Arthur sent. Why am I forgetting? Why am I like second guessing myself? I'm 99% sure Arthur sent me that. Somebody sent me it. I'm pretty sure it's Arthur though. He sent me a couple of things. I know. Scott has sent me. He sent me Agents of Chaos. The no, no, yeah, Agents of Chaos. The SFBC copy because that I was he had an extra copy and he wanted to send it to me. Yeah, having an extra copy of SFBC. um just playing another Scott. Um and then he also sent me a couple of posters that he had too. No, he just sent me the Kenobi poster. Okay. Which that's I guess I can turn my camera. I don't look that bad, but it's that poster right here Scott sent me. So I'm gonna turn that off. You don't want to see that. Um, what else can I talk about? I guess I can talk about what books I'm gonna get signed at Legends Con because that is obviously coming up soon. Um, speaking of Scott, speak of the devil.
What's going
What's up,
on?
Scott? What's going on, man? How are you?
Just got done watching Matt's stream, the bachelor party stream.
No one is really watching our stream, but you know, people watch it later. It is late. Anyway, I was talking about, some of the stuff I have been sent over the past year or so. You sent me Agents of Chaos. Um, and that you sent me that poster too, right? You sent me that as well, the Kenobi poster?
Yeah, I had several copies
Okay.
of that. Somebody was selling a bunch of them, about 20 of them.
Okay. I
So
figured I was, and for some reason I know you didn't send me the Supernatural the Amazon copy, but I don't know why. I know it was Arthur, but at the same time, like, was it Arthur or somebody else? I don't remember. I think it was Arthur though. Um, I don't know.
yeah, I sent you
Which
the
I'm very lucky.
poster and the you said you were missing some of the omnibus or the Epic Collection comics. So I think I
Oh
had an
yeah.
extra copy
Oh
of
yeah,
it.
you sent me that too. Volume 2 of KOTOR. That's right.
Right.
That's right. I still and then they printed volume 1 of KOTOR. I don't know if you saw that, but like a month ago they reprinted it, so I was able to buy a copy.
Oh,
Um
that's
which
cool.
is yeah, that was really nice to see because they had that was out of print for years, but they
But
reprinted that.
the thing is they printed that hardcover omnibus that had all of them together, all 50 issues. So
Yeah, yeah,
that
they did that
kind of
too.
negated, yeah, it negated the need to have that one of the three. And there's also one of the Clone Wars Epic collections too that I think it's volume 2 for the Clone Wars that's really expensive for some reason. They'll probably end up reprinting that at some point too. But
Yeah, I hope they reprint a lot of their some of their out of print stuff.
yeah, it's just annoying
'Cause
because I have all those comics, but I thought the Epic collections, because they situated the stories in a different order, that
Mhm.
those were a better product than the original, like Dark Horse trade paperbacks. So I have the
That's
Dark Horse
crazy.
trade paperbacks, and I have the Epic collections, and I have like some single issues too. So it's like,
That's crazy that Marvel has kind of like they're doing better in the trade paperback department. Uh, Marvel's doing excellent with
well,
their Epic collections.
yeah, they have the
Excellent.
benefit of hindsight too. So there's that.
That
that
is
they
true.
have all
That
these
is true.
years of people looking over the stuff and saying, does this make sense? I think there's still some issues with the Epic collections, but there's always room for improvement. So the fact that they
Right.
are taking some care and effort in doing that is a good thing, I think.
I just appreciate how they put, like, some unused art or art without color or, you know, they it feels like when they put those books out, it feels like a true homage to not just the EU, but like a love letter to EU fans. I don't know. And Matt has said that he had spoke with some of the higher ups at Marvel Comics, and they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to reprint new EU, but Lucasfilm won't let us."
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that's
hell, I
been
think I'd be more interested in new EU coming out of Marvel than I would even Del Rey because I don't like Del Rey. I think they're Del Rey. They've kind of gone downhill over the years, but
it
I'd be
depends
more
who's in charge. I think Jennifer Heddle was the head of the Star Wars like editing department under Lucasfilm licensing, and she had a couple years under Legends, but most of her tenure's
right.
been under the new canon, so she's probably compromised. But there's some
Oh,
hope.
most definitely.
You'd have to get an idea of who's in charge there and their views on what they think of the expanded universe, just to make sure that they don't have
Right.
any funny ideas.
Well, even then, I've kind of, I've spoken to Jennifer Heddle, and I asked her, I know who decided to decanonize the EU. That was the story group. That's been confirmed. But I asked her who made the decision to discontinue the EU, and who is still saying we can't have no more new EU. She told me that's a Kathleen Kennedy level decision.
Right.
So I kind of just told myself, well, as long as she's in charge, there's no chance. There's just not.
I think that's obvious unless there's a change of course where they think that the direction of the new movies, the new shows, the new idea of everything being under the same continuity isn't going the way that they foresaw, and they change course and
Right.
do something different, like Star Wars Visions. I said in my article that I did on the expanded universe, like they could do something like that that's on a smaller scale, that's self-contained, that is part of the expanded universe, but still continues the story in some way. And
Right.
I think that would still be a win for us. It may not be exactly what we want, but it would be a start.
Yeah, it would
So
certainly be a start, absolutely.
yeah.
And I think Visions is nothing more than just it's a great defense for the EU, I feel. And to be honest
But
with you, some of those Vision stories, I've not seen them all because I thought the first season was but some of those stuff could fit in the EU, kind
oh
of.
yeah, sure. I'm sure some of
So
the new canon could fit in the EU if you chose to do so. I think Joe's
yeah,
made
but
explanations for
I
yeah.
think Visions is different because it's not really canon. It's not meant to be in the new canon. It's kind of just, it's not Legends. It's not canon. It's like just there.
Right.
So, and I think he said on his, because I know he's added some of those episodes to his timeline, and he's basically like, well, if the new canon won't have him, then we'll have him. And I'm like, you know what? I agree with you, Joe. You
Mhm.
know,
It's
I
funny
don't
the
agree
back
with him putting Rebels and whatever on his timeline, but that's Visions. I can take.
Yeah, it's funny. The original backlash against Supernatural Encounters was the fact that it was going to include certain new canon material, and people didn't like that. And now,
Yeah.
after it came out, it's completely different. So I just thought that was funny that now
Have you had
people
a
don't
chance
like
to
it.
read it?
Yeah, I've read certain chapters, and I sort of followed along Marcel's
Oh, okay.
streams where they did that book club. Certain chapters, I
Right.
didn't go through every episode because some of them are 4 or 5, 6 hours long in some cases. But yeah,
Yeah.
it in general, it's not my thing. It's a little bit too much in the weeds. Like I like the connectivity of certain things, but when you drill down so much and make a new story and sort of change the way certain things were meant to be in the beginning, it doesn't
Right.
really suit my interest that much. everybody's different. Everybody has different preferences. I like Joe. I think he knows a
He's a
lot about
wonderful
the
guy.
EU. Yeah, he's a
Right.
wonderful guy. It's not the kind of story that I would prefer. I would prefer something like Escape from Dagu, Lightsider.
Right.
Those are the lost EU stories that I enjoy the most. Not that I don't enjoy Supernatural Encounters, it's just not my first choice.
Well, it's a very different story.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
very much a, it's just like Matt said, it's like the Silmarillion, so it's very different. It's not really a novel per se. It's like
I, I'd equate it to
I
like
don't know.
a deep a deep EU version of Kevin J. Anderson's illustrated expanded universe.
Right.
A,
Exactly.
a
That's a
very,
perfect.
very yeah
Yeah,
niche
it's a perfect
version
way to
of that.
describe it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Supernatural Encounters, when I do read it, it's gonna be one of those things where there's a lot of parts of it I just fall in love with. I think parts where it talks about like Abeloth and the Celestials and sort of like the origins of the galaxy, that's gonna be something I'm probably going to just absolutely love. But there's gonna be other parts like Howard the Duck and the Disney canon that's in it, and all the other, in my opinion, crap that he put in the book.
Uh-huh.
It's just gonna make me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah. I mean,
um,
even Abel Pena's articles sometimes where he drew from a lot of different sources from the EU from various stories and tried to weave together something that didn't really make sense. He's
right.
just trying to like flex his knowledge in some cases. Some of them were good. Some of them were good. Some of them weren't. You can
Right,
definitely overdo those kinds of stories to a point where it's a little bit unbelievable.
right.
I like the chapters on the Ewoks or the sections on the Ewoks, especially. I think that was my
Right.
favorite one.
I think I'll
Um,
enjoy that too.
the ones that are generally more familiar and not they don't have specific knowledge of the Sith gods and all that stuff. I'm not really well versed in the Old Republic era, so some of that
Okay.
stuff went a little over my head in certain cases. But you can skip around. The good thing about that book is you don't need to read it in its entirety. It's sort of like an essential guide where you could just skip to the parts where you like.
That's interesting. That's kind of cool. I plan on reading the whole thing cover to cover, but
Sure.
um I don't know. And I'm actually really glad because Arthur sent me the Amazon copy because that's the copy I want to read from.
Hmm.
I feel like that's a copy I can write notes in, I can highlight, I can, do, it's a proper reading copy but my paperback copy that Joe assigned, I kind of want to keep that pristine.
Yep.
So,
I mean, I read out of the hardcover version. I just took the dust jacket off, but yeah,
right.
I set
Well,
it down after a
that's
while.
easier to beat up. That's easier to beat up the hardcover. I meant it's harder to beat up.
Mm. But I haven't
So,
read it cover to cover. And just going back to what you said about like how they can't write expanded universe material, that it's a high level um, Kathleen Kennedy level decision.
right.
There was at least uh, an idea that they could explore alternatives to decanonizing everything when they were going to do the new movies. There was an idea that they were going to keep the Thrawn trilogy and maybe certain Bantam stories like Courtship of Princess Leia. And I think Dave Wolverton's said that publicly that
Really?
there was some there was some planning or some idea to see how much that they could keep, because ultimately they did keep certain elements of the EU like Black Sun, even if they didn't keep Shadows of the Empire specifically. I know
Mhm.
Black Sun was in the Clone Wars, but they did
Right.
keep certain overarching elements, like Fondor and there's certain like planets that are known
Yeah,
outside of,
it's
yeah.
a lot of that stuff and a lot of the reason why they kept that is, like, in some of their new, like, maps of the galaxy that they've had in some of their source books. I don't even know where they're coming from, but A lot of them just have EU planets on them. Like most of EU planets are canon now.
Hmm.
So same with a lot of the technology and weapons and it really it's just the stories that are different. But even then with I'm honestly kind of glad they didn't go down that route of well, we can keep some stuff canon. And the
It
reason
would have
why
been
I'm glad because it's like, well, then they would have just created a Frankenstein story, you know?
right.
I don't
It
know.
it would have been hard to do. I think one possibility they could have explored is doing a similar continuity to a certain point and then branching out in two different directions. So, say they go up to the Hand of Thrawn trilogy and then branch away to the New Jedi Order, and then the new movies is like another branch. Um,
Right.
that would have been one way to do it, but obviously you can't. You have like the Solo kids to deal with, and a lot of mainstay characters that you need some explanation as to what happened to them. In the films if they don't appear. So
Right.
it's
I
kind of
mean,
hard to do.
I know Matt has suggested, I think this was years ago, but at the time in what 2014, um, the the original three, they were in their well, Carrie and Mark were in their 60s, Harrison was in his 70s, just like their characters counterparts in the novels.
Hmm.
So Matt was kind of suggesting, well, why not just continue the story after Fate of the Jedi? They could have. Everybody's aged the same,
Yeah,
and you really would have to, catch everybody up because if you look at there was going to be 30 years, 40 years of history unexplained either way. So, for the audience at least, obviously, if assuming they went with, the direction Matt suggested, the audience, that stuff was already explained what happened. But in the new canon, there was still 30 years of history unexplained, and there was a lot of stuff that had clearly happened that was a mystery. So, like, why couldn't they do that with the new canon or with the EU? Say,
hmm
continue literally right after Crucible and make three good movies and continuing the story. You could
yeah,
easily establish, okay, Chewie's passed away by this point. Han and Leia had twins, but Jason turned to the dark side. He passed away. There was the war with the Vong, but their youngest son passed away. So you could have done a quick flashback sort of sequence. Maybe Luke's doing the voiceover, and showing what happened. But
hmm
hell do I know?
well, it's almost like they didn't want to use Luke, Han, and Leia anyway in the new films.
I mean,
Like
that
they
is
sort
true.
of did, but they didn't. They couldn't quite make up their mind, I guess. So
Clearly, I mean, they killed them all off. So
yeah, it's where I think you could have done it way after Crucible, like in an era that say 50 years after Crucible, which would be before Legacy, but still have some time to write a story it doesn't
I
affect
mean,
anything else
maybe
in the EU.
that could work. But I mean,
It,
imagine if we'd gotten a film like a trilogy where it's just continuing the expanded universe. I mean, imagine that would have been so awesome. But
yeah,
it's
well,
like they could have just embraced the expanded universe, like wholeheartedly embraced it.
I don't
But they
think
didn't.
I don't think that was ever a possibility because what sort of story would you write? Are you going to write
They
about
didn't
the
have to.
big
They could
three?
literally just adapt stories, and they still make money. I
Yeah, they
think.
could do that.
And
They
they
could do
could,
that.
there's so many gaps within the storytelling. They could still write new stories.
Yeah, I don't
I
really
don't know.
like the idea of adapting. There was a lot of talk back in the day, maybe there still is, about adapting the X-wing books into a TV show. That those would translate well somehow to a TV show, and
I don't
I
know.
just like the
I don't
books
know about
better.
that.
Right, right. But if you do it, you could only make a mistake somewhere. like the real true version of that story is in book form. I don't know why
Well,
you would
yeah.
want to see it on television. I mean, they have all these fan projects now about animating literary stories into cartoons, and I just don't understand that. I know everybody likes to watch TV, and they like the visual aspect of it, but the truest
Well,
form of those
the
stories.
reason why the reason why I suggested that is not necessarily because I just want to see it on TV. Like, I don't care. But because Disney could still make TV shows and shit about Star Wars and still get their money, but just adapting an EU story. But even then, there's plenty of room in the EU to, make new stories in any medium.
Mhm.
So I agree with you. I don't think that like X-Wing would like translate well to an animated. Now, what I do feel like would translate well is New Jedi Order, but I only say that because I felt like that was just a continuous narrative, and I feel like that would have been a good TV show. I also just want to see the using a long war visually. That's my main reason. I'm not gonna lie, but um, I don't know. I'm just saying, like they did not have to get rid of the. They could have embraced it and it could have been I don't know, but they didn't. I mean, it's too late now, but way too late.
Well, it's never too late to reboot because they can always change
No,
their
of course not.
minds. And what do you mean?
Well, I agree with you. It's not
Oh,
never
okay.
too late to reboot, not in
Yeah.
Disney's case.
And that's what we were saying all along is like if they rebooted the EU, they could eventually reboot the new canon. So they're going
Yeah.
to suffer the same fate. I'm sure that's going to happen at some point because they're going to write themselves
Oh,
into a
absolutely.
corner. Uh, I don't think
Absolutely will.
they've taken ample planning of what they're laying out. I think you see that in some of the comic books that sort of step on the toes of some other things in the new canon, but I don't follow it
Yeah.
as
And
closely
I
as I do.
and back in the day, obviously you know this, but with George in charge, that was never gonna happen. A reboot? Hell no. I mean, Leland, she said multiple times there's never a reboot. Now Disney's in control. Now reboots are what they do. They're the king of reboots. And it's like I'd love to go on Twitter and ask Matt Martin, "Hey, well, will there ever be another Star Wars reboot?" I would love to see what he had to say about that, but
Hmm. There were quotes
because
about that for sure. You're right about that, but at the same time, towards the last few years, there was an effort to make things more accessible. So, for example, starting with the Clone Wars, they sort of revamped that show. They took certain elements like Asajj Ventress and that from the previous version of the Clone Wars, but it was a new story. It told, in some cases, similar events like Asajj's falling out with Dooku and that, but from a different point of view, and the circumstances were different. It couldn't really mesh with the original story, and then from there they moved on to things like Empire and Rebellion, the novels where they didn't really relate to any of the previous canon. There were books that you could pick up from the start, having not read any of the previous EU, and have it still make sense to you. Same with the Brian Wood comics. So
mhm.
you had things like Rebel Heist and
I
d-
see.
didn't
I see
connect.
what I see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily think that they were going to reboot. I think what they were doing was, I think what they could have done. I think what's certainly possible is they could have done like what Marvel did with the Ultimate Universe, where I don't know if you know anything about Marvel Comics, but the
No.
Ultimate Universe in Marvel was not a reboot, but it was a new continuity that they established because Marvel's like, hey, there's a lot of comics here, and most of the characters have very long histories, and it'd be hard. They were like, well, it'd be hard for new readers to kind of catch up. So they're like, okay, we'll create this new universe alongside it, like as an alternative. I think that was possible, but I don't think they would have ever got rid of the EU. Not
Yeah.
just suggesting that, but I've seen people like Pablo Hidalgo say, "Well, what about Wood Wars? What about TCW? What about this and that?" And it's like, no, that's I mean, yeah, they were probably creating newer stories that were not as connected as in the case with the Wood comics, but TCW that just contradicted shit.
Well,
I
they
mean,
sent they released those stories and they sent a lot of mixed messages. Obviously, from the start, for example, for the Brian Wood comic series, it
right,
overlapped. It didn't tell the same story as the EU. There were certain elements like Wedge's backstory with the uh, space station, the family fueling depot, and that. But the origins of Rogue Squadron and there were certain elements that didn't mesh with the EU. There were
right,
contradictions, and they said, "Well, this is a new story that's only considering the first film, right? That's the only backstory. That's the only basis of canon that this story is writing from." And
right,
we gathered from that response that this was not expanded universe. It was like an infinities. It wasn't denoted as end canon or anything, but it was like the infinities in that it was telling a different story, not part of the
right.
EU. But then there's certain quotes that say something different, like they include those stories now in the essential. What is it? The Essential Legends collection, the
Yeah. Yeah, that's
com-
right.
comic collection, in with the other stories. So there's no differentiation that you would expect from those comics. So
Right.
you could pick your quotes. You could pick the original quote and stand by that, or you could stick by the new quote. It's not really well defined, and it probably changed along the way. They probably said, well, if our tried and true EU fans aren't going to pick up the story because they don't consider it EU, then we have a problem, right? Because we want to
Right.
be accessible to the new fan, but at the same time, we want the older fans to still pick this stuff up. So they don't want to alienate them. So it's a tricky situation with that sometimes, and it's not
Is
always as clear as people make it out to be.
I was gonna ask, is the because I know that's a big debate, the Brian Wood comics. Um, are those comics canon? Like, how did they like? Because I know that's the debate is it even considered canon? I
It
mean, what
the,
are
the
your thoughts on that?
the initial responses, I forget if they were in the like the letters to the editor section, or there were some other quote from Randy Stradley, but he was asked, well, why are there contradictions in the origins of Rogue Squadron? Um, and he said, well, his response was, like I said, the only source material that they were using for this comic was the Star Wars film, A New Hope, and that's it.
Right.
Brian Wood wasn't aware of the other EU materials and didn't use them. In his backstory, I think he knew something about Wedge's backstory, but they didn't use any of the Marvel comic sources or none of that. So based on that answer, my impression was, oh, it's not canon. I still picked them up. I still bought them, but I know for a fact that some EU fans at the time, when they heard that response, they quit buying them because they considered that to not be canon. And now it seems like they've walked that back since. So maybe it is canon. It's hard to say now. I think there's obvious contradictions. Like you can't get around the
Right.
contradictions, but there's contradictions in the rest of the EU too, and that doesn't you don't make certain elements that have contradictions not canon just because they have contradictions. So
Yeah, but
it's a
I think Wood stuff is a little different because they were like, well, the only thing to us that exists is A New Hope. But the other E I mean, in terms of other contradictions in the EU, that's just accident, human mistake. In this case, they're not even adhering to the continuity.
right,
So it's like,
right, and they said so
and
up front. So
right. So I don't even know if I should read those comics. I don't even know, dude. 'Cause I haven't obviously haven't read them. At
the
least when I go through
first
the Rebellion era.
yeah, the first story arc isn't that bad, except for the contradictions of the origins of Rogue Squadron. But besides that, it just gets worse and worse. The later story arcs are even worse, and they're very similar to the sort of story arcs that you see in the Marvel comics, and I think there's one in the Empire comic series where Leia tries to hook up with this prince or something that has riches to fund the rebellion, or has a base to serve as the rebellion's new point of operations. You know, it's the same story that you've heard a couple times before, just told in a different way. So I don't know if Wood got the idea because somebody told him about that story, or that idea is just so easy to come up with. Multiple people came up with that same story plan. Who knows? But
Right.
it's very similar
That's
to
interesting.
stories that were told in the past.
It's very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it.
Well, you can read it and decide for yourself, but I think a lot of people that were at least around during the time where Stradley said that in an interview or in a newsletter, um, and they heard about that, and they remember that, and they stick with that. Some people that came in later would have an easier time, I guess, saying, yeah, it kind of fits together. I think even the guy that put together the Epic Collections was at Legends Con, and he says, "Oh yeah, it all kind of fits. That's why we put it in those collections." So
Interesting. Definitely interesting. Uh, oh, Wood Wars. I don't even know what to think about that. We'll see.
yeah, and Razor's Edge was the same way. That they didn't use any elements of the EU, except there was something about an Alderaanian battleship or Alderaanian cruiser or something. That was the only element of EU material that in that entire book. It's a completely
Dang.
new story otherwise. And then what was the Han Solo one? Honor Among Thieves. That was a good story, but it didn't have anything to do with the EU. And you know how crowded that era is in between A New
Right.
Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. So to add new stories just because everybody likes reading about the big three is kind of hard to do and still have it make sense with the rest of the EU story arc, because there's a whole bunch of things going on. There's certain elements that you have to pay attention to when the rebellion left Yavin 4 and when Han lost his money and all those elements.
Mm,
It's so easy to make an error in continuity with all that going on. I'm not sure anybody's even checked that story all the way to make sure its placement makes sense, or even where it really takes place, because they have that timeline
right.
on the first page of the Del Rey books, but that doesn't tell you where it takes place in relation to all the comics, all the short stories, everything else that takes place in that era. It's really
Right.
crowded. Like you have Star Wars Missions, you have Galaxy of
Does it
Fear.
contradict anything? Do those books contradict anything?
As far as I can tell, no. But
Okay. It just
I,
doesn't have like a whole lot of continuity with other stuff.
yeah, you really have to do some research, and you really have to read all that stuff together to really make sure. And there's just so much material. I'm not sure anybody really reads all that stuff back to back to make sense, unless you're doing something like your own timeline. And
Right.
even when you're doing that, it's tough just because there's so much material.
Well, Wikipedia is saying that I guess the book says that it happened 2 years after Yavin, so somewhere in there.
I mean, that makes sense, but 2 years and 2 days, 2 years and 8 months, that there's still a
Right. I
big
mean, yeah.
I think they changed the time place of Splinter of the Mind's Eye, because originally Splinter of the Mind's Eye was really close. It was almost right after A New Hope, but given all the comic arcs and like Vader's quest and all that stuff, I think they ended up moving it back at some point.
Yeah, on my timeline, which I follow Joe's chronology on his website,
Mm,
I have it takes place quite a bit after A New Hope. It takes place like closer to Empire than it does A New Hope.
yeah.
Like on my timeline, on my shelf, I have Star Wars, I have Death Star, Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, Allegiance, Scoundrels, Honor Among Thieves, Choices of One, Galaxies, and then Sworn of the Mind's Eye.
And that's tough when you read it, because Luke's perspective is he really wants to be with Princess Leia. Like, he hasn't seen her at all except for the events of A New Hope. And then when you add
Right.
all those EU adventures in there, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I guess you got to do what you got to do, because you have Vader in there, and when they figure out Vader's still alive after Battle of Yavin, I think like that's an issue. And when Vader figures out the name of the rebel pilot that destroyed the Death Star, like that's a big issue as well. So there's a lot of key elements that you have to like keep track and
If
see if these
if it was
stories
up to
make sense.
me, I would put that book in canon. If it was up to me, because it's just that book is so early in Star Wars history. Like, I mean, there were none of the other movies are even out yet, except the first one, obviously. It's just, but then of course, then there's the Han Solo books and the Lando books, and it's like, well, but those are very different though, because that has nothing really to do with Luke and Leia. Those are prequels
Hmm.
about Han and Chewie, and then of course Lando. But and even then, later EU stories like the AC Crispin trilogy, they brought those stories into the canon. So it's like it's like AC Crispin built her story around those books, while Spin of the Mind's Eye was just kind of said, yeah, it's canon, but no one else kind of cared about it.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, it's a very unique book. If it's up to me, I would have put it in canon, but
Well, it's
what do I
tough
know? Make it the
because it's not just that. There's some early storybooks, like children's storybooks, that have Luke Skywalker that are set after A New Hope. I think there's one, I forget the title. Is it like Rebel Moon or something? It's the one where
I think I know what you're talking about.
he goes to an academy, right? It's not the Imperial Academy because it's after A New Hope,
Right.
so it must be like a Rebel Academy, but it's not clear exactly where it takes place. And I think they go to Tatooine at some point, and I don't know. There's a whole lot of weird stuff going on that it doesn't really mesh too well with all of the later EU material. But
Mhm.
at the time it was written, they had no idea that all that stuff would be out there. So you can't really blame
Well,
it on those
yeah.
early stories. So
Well, yeah, and those early stories, I mean, people will bring them all. Seems like all these contradicts, like those are early stories, dude. Look at any franchise ever and look at some of their earliest stories and try and tell me that there's not contradictions that later
mm,
stories have made with them. Tell me. It's those are very early, like, it's Star Wars in its infancy.
mhm.
Continuity was not a thing yet. So,
Yeah. Are the
I don't
missions
know, dude.
books in the essential chronol or the essential readers companion? I forget.
I don't know. I
Do
actually have some
you
of those
remember?
mission books, but I don't know. Let me look real quick. I don't think they are, but I'll double check.
Mm.
I haven't pulled out my Essential Readers Companion in a long time. Uh, what's that? There's the Rebel Force books, Adventure Journal, the Galaxy, Star Wars Galaxy short stories, the magazine. I don't see them. I
Yeah,
don't think they're in
they
here.
probably classify those as an RPG. So it's
Probably,
tough
yeah.
because there's a lot of West End Games material in that era as well, and
Right,
you don't have a source book. So, for example, the Essential Reader's Companion that changed the place of certain stories, and that just covers books and short stories. But then when you
right.
add the comics and you add the games and the RPGs, it's just like it's really crazy, and there's no real official timeline to speak of. There's a timeline of comics that's old. I think the last version of the was it the Comics Companion, that was like 2005, I think, maybe 2008. So
Right.
you have like all these different checklists and official timelines, but they don't they first of all they don't cover all the material because they don't go all the way up till 2014, and second of all they're kind of old, so you don't know if you could still rely on the material that they do cover. So it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see them in there, but and those books are interesting. I have a couple of them.
Right.
Um, there's like parts of it in here are stories, but it's all the I think when I read these, have you read any of them?
Long time ago, I have all of them, but
Do you have to read like the game part of it, or can you like just read the story part and you'll be good?
you can read the story part. The episode one ones, they have a game book and a novel part, so they skip all of that choose your own adventure portion of it entirely. You could just
Right.
read the story, which I like. Those work much better.
I think one of these days I do want to play one of these games with somebody. Maybe
Well,
when maybe during Legends Con, I think I'll bring a couple of these.
the good thing, I think they're just one player. I don't think you can play it with someone
Oh,
else,
they're only
but
one player?
I think so. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
that's
you
lame.
yeah, you choose your skill points or you choose your weaponry or something, and then based on what you chose, you play or you go through the story, and it says go to this part or add 2 points if you have intelligence skill or blaster skill or whatever. Um, that's the way it works. I think
Damn.
there's some like choose your own adventure goosebump books that works the same way. You sort of choose your attributes or your equipment ahead of time, like going into the adventure, and then based on what you chose, that has story implications later on.
Damn.
But
Well, that's a real shame, man.
the good thing is you can read those in one sitting. They're really short.
Well, that's definitely true.
Yeah. But
Well, it's weird to think because I spent so long trying to get every EU book, and now I have them all, and it's like, oh, what do I do with my life now?
yeah, I
Oh,
mean, it was impossible when I was your age to get everything. It was just it was too hard because there's some stuff that you just couldn't find. And lately, stuff seems more and more accessible. Like I just got all the Star Wars Junior books, the Episode One
oh, okay.
storybooks. They were Scholastic Market, so you couldn't buy them. You couldn't go to the store and buy them at all. Um,
Right.
they were only sold at like school book fairs, and I was too old to buy the those. I did have the I was subscribed to the Scholastic Star Wars, was it Missions? It was the episode one stories, so I was like right in
Right.
that age range to be subscribed to that. But then they had one for younger kids, and if you weren't a subscriber or you didn't like have a lot of money to shell out on eBay. You just couldn't obtain that material. It was just too hard to do. But now with things like Joe's website and these Lulu collections, it's much easier to have a complete collection. And I think nobody's really claimed that they have a complete collection of like everything. But I think some people are really close. You know what I mean?
Matt,
In terms, well, does Matt have everything? I don't think he does. I don't think he has all the magazines.
well, no, I'm saying that he's really close to having everything.
Yeah,
But he bought a lot of the magazines. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he has most of them.
Like the Insider magazines and the Gamer magazines. Sure,
At least
but
the ones that have short stories in them. Yeah.
But does he have Polyhedron? Like, I don't think he does.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
So it's the they have Star Wars RPG material. Chris has shown off several episodes on his YouTube channel of just certain. Sometimes they're character overviews. Sometimes there's an adventure. Sometimes they talk about specific elements from books, like the Prophets of the Dark Side from the Jedi Prince series. There's a lot of different things they do with those, and some of them they have like foreign RPG magazines that it's not quite clear if they really had the Star Wars license to use the material. But then things like Challenge magazine and Polyhedron magazine, it's pretty clear they have the license because those are mainstream like RPG magazines. They just have Star Wars adventures in them.
I'm not sure if he has that or not, but I'm sure he's read it. But I don't know if he has it. But Matt was all like, I know he doesn't have Imprint, the short story, Fate the Jedi short story.
He doesn't have an original, but he has it in his short story collection. Yeah.
Yeah, he's printed it out himself, and I think that was good enough for him. But what I need to buy, I need to start Luluing some of those New Jedi Order short stories. Because I don't have any of them, not printed, and I haven't read all. I've read Elysia, I've read Recovery, I've read Boba Fett: A Practical Man, if that counts.
I think they're all in the paperback versions of New Jedi Order.
Well, not all of them.
No,
because there were some insider short stories. There was The Apprentice. Was The Apprentice reprinted? I don't know. I've read a lot of the novellas.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a lot of the novellas. There's a lot of those insider short stories and those gamers. Like, there was one, this is one I really want to read the most. It's called, it's the one with Older from Junior Jedi Knights. It's like a 6-part short story.
Is it the Crystal?
Like half of the. No, that's it. I know. I forgot what it's called. It's. I have to Google it. I got StarsTimeline.net. Let me use Joe's website. It is called. Is it not on here?
Oh, Embassies.
Equals and Opposites. Wait, no. That's the Star Wars Tales comic, not that one.
Emissary of the Void.
Emissary of the Void. That's it. Where is it? It's not even on here. Or am I just missing it? Probably just missing it. Emissary of the Void. Yeah, I can't find it.
Greg Keys. It's 6-part. First 3 parts were printed in Star Wars Gamer 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And then Insider 62 to 64. Yeah, that's when I was subscribed to Insider. So I remember that well.
Oh, here it is. Emissary of the Void. I found it.
Isn't it funny? It's like when you're subscribed to the magazine during the period in which that's covered, you don't really think anything about it. Like I didn't really think think that was a big deal. But I guess if I wasn't subscribed and I never read those stories, I would think, wow, that's really a story that I need to track down. But yeah, made freely available at StarWars.com prior to the printing of the first 3 chapters. So I guess
Why does he have it taking place after the Vong War?
that's a good
I thought it took
question.
place during it. Like he has it in 26 ABY. Or he has it after the unifying force, I should say. Not that the war. I don't know how long the war didn't go on a year, did it? More than a year? I don't
Yeah,
even remember.
yeah. It
It
went
did?
on several years. Yeah.
Well, I don't know why he has it there, because um yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, New Jedi Order
That's weird.
starts in 25 ABY, then goes to 29 ABY, so it's 4 years.
Oh, okay. Well, apparently. Oh, I see. He has it. The whole series goes from 25, yeah, to 30. I see it now. But I don't know why he has it all the way down here. I don't know.
Ask Joe. He's got to put some explanation. See, a timeline does you no good unless you have explanations to tell you why certain things go where.
Now, there's something I would like. I need not need, but I'm gonna tell him about because I read okay. No, I'd read the prologue to Edge of Victory. Wait, when did I read Recovery? Did I read that first? No, no, no. I waited to read Recovery until I read Star by Star because I knew since they had it in there as the prologue, I'm like, okay, there's gonna be some connection here and I don't want to miss it. Which I can't even recall the connection now, but so I'd read Edge of Victory, read both of those books. And when I got to Star by Star, I read Recovery, but I knew that Recovery took place before Edge of Victory. But when I read it, I'm like, why does it mention a death? It mentions Dorsk 82's death.
Hmm.
But the death didn't happen until Edge of Victory 1 in the prologue. So
Is it between them? Maybe between
yeah,
Edge of Victory
it's
1 and 2.
no. It should take place. The prologue. You should read the prologue to Edge of Victory 1 first. Then you read Recovery. The reason why I say that is because Recovery deals a lot with some of the events that had happened in Balance Point. Like it's like directly afterwards, so I don't think it would be in between those two.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Um, so you would read Edge of Victory 1 prologue. In fact, I'm gonna message Joe about this in just a sec. Then you should read Edge of Victory. No, you should read Recovery because that talks about the death from the prologue. And then you read the rest of the two the rest of the duology, and then just continue on from there. But for whatever reason, every timeline I've ever seen, including Joe's, including all the official timelines from Lucasfilm, has Recovery before Edge of Victory, even before the prologue. And it's like, okay, you're going to get spoiled for that. Because hell, I would just bring it out. Let me show you. Where's Star? Here it is. Our paperback version. I'll go ahead and read it. Okay, here it is. It says already a lynch mob on Ando had killed Dorsk 82. And then it just continues talking about other people who had died. So it's like it just mentions it in passing. And it's like, wait, because if you're like me, you read Dark Saber and Jedi Academy Device, and you're like, wait, what? So, but the whole prologue to Edge of Victory 1 is what happened on Ando with Dorsk 82.
Okay.
I remember noticing that immediately as I was reading the series. So I'm actually gonna send Joe a message about it.
Yeah.
Tell him I think that's something he should change.
That's a good point.
It's getting late, man. I just got home from work an hour ago, so
Yeah. It's Holy cow, it's 2:30. Yeah.
You wanting to leave?
Yeah, it's been I've watched too many hours of YouTube tonight. It's been crazy
That's
with the
funny.
Geeks Addict stream and then Matt stream. I was kind of watching them both at the same time.
Oh, they were
Yeah.
both streaming? That's cool.
Yeah.
I only popped in for a few minutes, but thank y'all very much for watching. There's 3 people watching, even though none of them said anything in chat. It's okay. Scott, thank you very much for joining. We just hit the 1 hour mark, so it's a perfect time to end the stream. So y'all have a really good rest of the night. Thank y'all very much for joining.